6 American service members are dead. $5 billion have already been spent. Congress has been given no explanation for why we are there, no timeline for how long we stay, and no vision for what Iran looks like when the shooting stops. And the administration's official rationale for launching this war has changed, publicly, on camera, multiple times in the span of 48 hours. This is not a fog of war information gap. This is a government that does not have a strategy, cannot explain its own decisions, and is asking American troops to die for objectives it cannot articulate. We know this not because of opposition research or partisan accusations. We know this because members of Congress who sat inside the classified briefings came out and said so, on the record in plain language. No plan, no end game, no answers. Let's start with what happened inside those briefing rooms, because this is where the story gets damning in a way that no amount of White House spin can walk back. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois sits on both the House Oversight Committee and the House Intelligence Committee. He was in those briefings. He heard what the administration presented to justify this war. And when he came out, his assessment was not hedged, not diplomatic, not softened for the cameras. He said it was a deeply unsatisfactory hearing. He said the administration did not answer basic questions, not classified questions, not sensitive strategic questions, basic questions. What is the duration of these operations? What is the end game? What does the administration hope Iran looks like when the fighting stops? The answer to every single one of those questions, according to a sitting member of the House Intelligence Committee who was physically present in that room, was nothing. Silence, deflection, no answers provided. Think about what that means for a moment. The administration launched military strikes against a sovereign nation of 93 million people. It committed American forces to active combat operations. 6 Americans are already dead, and when Congress, the body the Constitution explicitly charges with the power to declare war, convened a classified briefing to understand the legal and strategic basis for those actions, the administration could not explain what it was trying to accomplish or how it planned to accomplish it. Krishnamurthy flagged something else that deserves scrutiny. The administration said it wanted regime change, except regime change is not happening. What appears to be emerging instead is, in his words, a more thuggish cast of characters potentially taking over. A leadership transition that nobody is mourning in one direction, but everyone is alarmed about in another. You went to war to remove a dangerous regime, and your own intelligence community is telling you the replacement may be worse, and you have no plan for that outcome either. Then there is the nuclear program, the stated pretext for this entire operation. The administration claimed last summer that it had obliterated Iran's nuclear capability. Total destruction, mission accomplished. And now, according to the same administration officials in that same briefing room, the program is underway again, and they conceded that bombing alone cannot eliminate it. So the primary justification for this war is a military objective the military itself is now acknowledging cannot be achieved through the strategy being employed. That is not a minor contradiction. That is the entire foundation of the case for war collapsing inside a classified hearing room. And then there is this. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, during his briefing, mentioned that the United States had taken out individuals responsible for plotting to assassinate Donald Trump. He floated that as a relevant factor. It was not the first time a member of this administration had invoked the Trump assassination attempt as potential motivation for these strikes. Krishnamurthy said he did not hear that framing in the briefings he attended, but the question it raises cannot be dismissed. Is this war, this illegal, unauthorized military campaign that has already killed 6 Americans and cost $5 billion, being conducted even in part as personal retaliation by a sitting president? Because if the answer to that question is yes, or even maybe, then we have moved from constitutional crisis into something considerably more dangerous. A president using the United States military as an instrument of personal grievance, without congressional authorization, without a strategic framework, and without honest public disclosure of the actual motivations. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, who sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, laid out the broader institutional failure with precision. He said the administration is constantly shifting its rationale for this war, making it up as it goes. And he drew the Iraq comparison not as political rhetoric, but as historical pattern recognition. Because at the start of the Iraq War, the Bush administration was also predicting quick, clean results. Nobody disputed that the United States military could overpower Iraq's conventional forces. The question was never about whether we could win the opening phase. The question was always, at what cost, for what objective, and with what plan for what follows. The Bush administration had no real answer to those questions in 2003. Trump's administration has no answer to those questions now. And Van Hollen identified something specific that cuts through all the noise. Iran's ballistic missiles cannot reach the United States. Their nuclear weapons program, while damaged, was not obliterated. That was a lie told to the American public last summer. The stated threats used to justify this war do not hold up to factual scrutiny. And when Secretary Hegseth accused Democrats who are questioning this war of rooting against their own country, Van Hollen's response was exactly right. We are rooting for the country. We are rooting for the service members who swore an oath to defend the Constitution, not to give one man unchecked authority to start wars whenever his own sense of morality tells him to. The framers of that Constitution were not being abstract when they gave Congress the power to declare war. They had just lived through the consequences of unchecked executive power. They understood precisely this scenario, and they designed the separation of powers specifically to prevent it. Now let's talk about the most publicly embarrassing moment of this entire crisis, because it happened on camera, and it is on the record, and it cannot be explained away. Secretary of State Marco Rubio gave a specific justification for the timing of these strikes. He said the administration knew Israel was going to take military action. They knew that action would trigger Iranian retaliation against American forces. And they made the decision to strike, preemptively, before Iran could launch those attacks, in order to minimize American casualties. That was the official rationale. Preemptive action to protect American troops from a known incoming threat. Then, in the same news cycle, President Trump was asked directly, did Israel force your hand? Did Israel's planned action pull the United States into this war? Trump's answer, no, I might have forced their hand. Then, hours later, Trump said it again. This had to happen anyway. Nothing to do with Israel. He just decided it needed to happen. Those two accounts are irreconcilable. Either the United States acted to preempt an Iranian response to Israeli military action, which is Rubio's version, or the United States acted on its own independent strategic judgment with no Israeli trigger, which is Trump's version. Both cannot be true. Senator Van Hollen was asked directly whether he had received any clarification. His answer, no, not even close. Two different officials gave two mutually contradictory explanations for why American troops are in combat, and Congress has not been given a coherent account of which one reflects reality. That is not a communications problem. That is an administration that either does not have a unified understanding of why it started this war, or is deliberately telling different audiences different stories. Neither interpretation is acceptable when Americans are dying. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, retired U.S. Navy captain, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, brought the strategic analysis down to operational specifics that the White House has not engaged with at any level. He framed it as a mathematics problem, and he is right to do so. The United States has air defense systems positioned across the Middle East. We have interceptors. Iran has Shahed drones, a lot of them, and a significant inventory of ballistic missiles. The question is not whether our systems can engage those threats. The question is, whose magazine runs out first? We can resupply, but resupply is not unlimited. And every asset pulled into the Middle East theater comes from somewhere else. Pull air defense capacity from the Indo-Pacific Command, and you reduce our ability to deter Chinese military action in the Western Pacific. You create an opening, or at least a perceived opening, that Beijing is capable of exploiting. Kelly said directly, a president making decisions quickly, without data, without deliberation, without full analysis of second and third order consequences, is a president who may win the first exchange and lose everything that follows. And Kelly confirmed what Krishnamurthy confirmed. The intelligence picture on the Iranian nuclear program did not support the administration's public claims. It was significantly damaged last summer. It was not obliterated. The capacity to reconstitute existed. The appropriate response to that situation was a question that demanded serious strategic analysis, not a unilateral bombing campaign launched without congressional authorization and justified with shifting rationales that contradict each other within the same news cycle. Here's what makes all of this worse. The administration's own Secretary of Defense stood before Congress and used shock and awe, the 2003 Iraq invasion, as a point of favorable comparison. He said this operation delivered twice the air power of shock and awe, minus the nation building. He said this is not a mission accomplished situation. And then he kept talking, apparently without recognizing that invoking both shock and awe and mission accomplished in the same breath, while defending a war launched without congressional authorization and without a stated endgame, is not a reassurance. It is a historical indictment delivered by the defendant himself. Let's be direct about the constitutional reality, because some of the coverage is still treating this as a political dispute between parties, when it is something more fundamental than that. Rand Paul has objected. Thomas Massie has objected. These are not progressive Democrats looking for an angle. These are conservative Republicans who read the Constitution and understand what it says. When you bomb a sovereign nation, that is an act of war. It does not matter how you characterize the operation, what you call the mission, or what press conference language you use to describe the strikes. We are bombing a country. That requires congressional authorization. The president has not obtained it. The president has not sought it. Speaker Johnson has been canceling votes to ensure Congress cannot exercise its constitutional authority to weigh in. That is not procedural maneuvering. That is the systematic dismantling of the checks and balances that prevent one person from taking this country to war based on nothing more than his own judgment and his own sense of moral authority. And Trump told us exactly what that means in practice. He said the only constraints on him are his own morality and his own sense of reason. Van Hollen's response to that statement was the correct one. This is an immoral president. We have seen that at home, in his conduct, in his court record, in his documented history. A man who is found civilly liable for sexual abuse, convicted on 34 felony counts, and attempted to overturn a free election, is now declaring that the only check on his military authority is his own internal moral compass. That is not a constitutional framework. That is autocracy with extra steps. 6 Americans dead, $5 billion spent, no strategic objective that can survive factual scrutiny, no plan for the day after, a rationale that changed multiple times in 48 hours, an administration that contradicted itself on camera about why the war started, a Congress being blocked from voting on its constitutional authority, and a president who says the only limit on his power is himself. Members of Congress came out of those classified briefings and told you the truth. No answers, no endgame, no plan. The question now is whether the institutions of this government have the structural integrity to enforce the Constitution against a president who has made clear he does not consider it binding on him. That answer gets written in the coming days, in court rulings, in congressional votes, in whether Republicans who know this is wrong continue to stay silent while Americans keep dying for a war nobody can explain. History is watching, and so are we.
No president in the history of the United States has ever been this dismissive or callous about the loss of life of our troops.
Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action, and sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more.
That's just the way it is, says the draft dodger, says the guy who referred to our troops as suckers and losers. And now he has started an illegal war to distract from his own political problems. And what does he have to say? There will likely be more casualties.
Just gave quite possibly the most disgusting and repulsive speech he has ever given out of his entire presidency. He just announced that 3 U.S. military service members died in the war that he decided to start in Iran. The guy that ran on being a no-wars president is apparently proud to send our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our sons, our daughters to die in a war that we had no business being a part of. And he very cold and callously stated that more will likely follow because that's what happens in times of war. And what I want to know is, when is it going to be enough for you Republicans? The Supreme Court deemed his tariffs illegal, and yet he continues to enact more tariffs. He is sending ICE out onto the streets of America, where they are literally killing Americans in those very streets. And now he's starting wars without congressional approval. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You Republicans need to grow a fucking spine and impeach the son of a bitch.
So Donald Trump has refused to attend the landing of the first 3 soldiers that have died in the Iran war. He says, I can't commit to that at this time. I don't have time. Look at these beautiful sculptures I put in this rose garden. Yeah, as usual, he does not care about the lives of American soldiers. He only cares about the money he's going to make and taking care of his buddies over in Israel. But yeah, he's not going to attend the first 3 soldiers landing here. And of course, he's pumping himself up about how beautiful he makes things at the White House instead, because that's way more important than 3 soldiers that lost their lives during a war that he started illegally and unconstitutionally. Yeah, Trump, as usual, is on par for being the least empathetic president ever in the history of presidents, literally refusing to attend the funerals of the 3 fallen soldiers.
Hi people, welcome back once again to IIran TV. Guys, you can see that most of Americans are not happy because of the way the war is going right now. As we speak, the video that we just watched, 6 American soldiers has lost their life to Iran and Israel war. Chai, may their soul rest in peace. I pray that God Almighty should console the family that they have left behind. This is the disadvantage of war. Going into war, what you need to consider is the life, things that we go along with it. Now, look at the innocent people have lost their life, and this is what some of these Americans are complaining. Why are they always using the American soldier for war? They are not happy with this at all. Losing your loved ones, your family, your friends is the last prayer everybody prayed on this earth. Yeah, so you can see that they are not happy that this war that is going on, and most of their people now are now losing their lives. Who know who is the next? May God Almighty restore peace so that this war will end. It will end. That is my own prayer. So you would have watched this to this moment. What do you say? Feel free to share your opinion, your thoughts under the comment section. And also remember to pray for them. Let there be peace before this war will turn another thing. Thank you for watching to this moment. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. If you are new, you're welcome. All my returning subscribers, you guys are the best. I will see you guys my next update, and bye bye for now.